Hey everybody, welcome to On Brand with Donny Deutsch. I am Donny Deutsch, and this is the show that's built on a simple premise that everything is a brand. Every person, every celebrity, every product, every company, every institution, every movement, every religion, everything is a brand. And that's why we're here, and that's what we do. And each week I'm going to be breaking down the brands of the week, the brands that are moving and shaking and kind of setting the zeitgeist to who we are. And on today's show, my big brand interview is with Hunter Biden. I talked to him about the Hunter Biden brand. Of course, a lot of controversy swirling around him, the president's son, and we're going to get into a really in-depth discussion about addiction, about him being the center of attention on campaign and what the Hunter Biden brand is and where it's going. But first, it's time for our brands of the week. Let's get right to it and just remind everybody what a brand is. A brand is a set of values, a value system, and we're going to go through the brands of the week, the ones that are making the big differences. First brand of the week is Heineken. Heineken did a really, really interesting thing over the Memorial Day weekend. Instead of taking out a traditional ad, they used Waze, W-A-Z-E, obviously the travel guide where you find out where the traffic is. And they took out ads saying to people, if you're about to drive and you've had too much to drink, we'll give you a free Uber ride. What a smart thing for a company to do. I mean, I've talked a lot about on the show about how companies doing cause marketing is so important, but that's just such a clever way to do it. And good for them. And Heineken has always been one of my favorite advertisers. This is not a recent thing. It's a few years old, but I would ask anybody to go online and look up Heineken building a bar ad. And they did an online ad. It was a few-minute long ad a few years ago. It was probably the best piece of advertising I've ever seen. What they did is they took you were the viewer you're watching. They took two individuals who had polar opposite views about things. They didn't know it. And for instance, there would be somebody who was against anti-transsexuals, and then there would be a transsexual. And the moderator would come in and they introduce the two people to each other. They didn't know anything about each other and say, hey guys, I need your help build this bar for me. And they'd spend the next couple hours building a bar. And at the very end, the narrator comes in and shows each one a film about each other. One saying he is a transsexual and the other one talking about, how they're anti-transsexual. And then saying to the two of them, do you guys want to have a beer together? And invariably, and they did this with an anti-Muslim person and a Muslim and people from opposite, ends who, if they knew each other ahead of time, would have tremendous animus towards each other because of their labels, because of their positioning. But this showed that once people just spend time together and they're not coming in labeled, just a beautiful thing that happens to me. Just a beautiful, beautiful ad. And I ask everybody to go watch it. So Heineken, a big brand up. Big brand down for a third of Americans. I'm not going to say which third, but YouGov just did a recent poll. This is really stunning. And it basically has the question, was the United States make a mistake sending troops to different wars? And in answer to the question of, did Americans believe sending troops to fight the Nazis was a mistake? 14% of Americans said yes, and 18% said they weren't sure. That's 32% of the Americans were not clear that we needed to go fight the fucking Nazis, okay? Which is in concert to, I talked about a poll recently from Washington Post, ABC News a couple of years ago that showed that 1 in 10 Americans thinks Nazi views are okay. And this is against the backdrop of crazy anti-Semitism around the world, of Nazi uprisings in Italy. And this is sobering. And what's particularly scaring is you take the one group, 30 to 44-year-olds, only 49% of them agreed that sending troops to fight World War II was not a mistake, which means 51% thinks that maybe it was a mistake. Scary stuff, guys. So for a third of Americans, about as big brand down as you can get. Not quite sure which, and when I look at it, 1 out of 3 Americans, which one it is, but really, really, really scary stuff. Third brand of the week, big brand down for the Republicans. They seem to be making my brands of the week every week, always a brand down, always the stupid party. This week is a stunning example that they've probably lost one of their last beachheads, which is the Law and Order Party. Congress put forward a bill, a Republican, not a bill, a commission to commission a group to look into the January 6th insurrection, what led up to it, what was behind it. Let's do a deep dive. We need to know what happened. One of the worst days of American history that we all know too well. And the Republicans voted against it. This is something that happened when a police officer was killed. Other police officers were beaten. So you can no longer claim that you are the Law and Order Party. You do not want to look into an insurrection. You do not want to look into an event where police officers were beaten and killed. Guess what? You don't get to own that anymore. Now the Democrats, in addition to owning infrastructure and healthcare and education and COVID relief, they get to own Law and Order also, because you don't want to look into Law and Order. You don't want to see what happened. You don't want to look in Republicans to see if what took Donald Trump 3 hours to call the National Guard. You don't want to look into if there are any tours led by GOP lawmakers in the previous weeks to show some of these people around the Capitol for once they got inside, how much of this is planned, what was involved. This is the worst thing since the Civil War as far as an insurrection in this country. It needs to be looked into. So Republicans, brand down, and you've lost your last bastion. You are not the Law and Order party anymore. Shame on you. Brand up for Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan, we haven't heard a lot about him recently. Obviously, he's one, he was a Trump victim, if you will, kind of like one of the many guys that went up against Trump, came up in the short end, but he's coming forward again, gave a big speech. And I'm going to read one of the things that once again, we conservatives find ourselves at a crossroads. And here's the reality that we have to face. If the conservative cause depends on the populist appeal of one personality or of one set of second-class imitations, we're not going anywhere. Voters looking for Republican leaders want to see independence and mettle. And this is another example. Each week, somebody's popping up. Paul Ryan's not in office now. He's not running for office. So I guess it's maybe easier to be brave. But you're going to see more and more. And history is going to reward those that speak out. Donald Trump will be indicted. Donald Trump will never run for president again. Donald Trump will never win president again. And the fools that keep following will pay the price. And I look for more you'll see in the coming months, more and more to pop up and step forward. So big brand up for Paul Ryan. As opposed to big brand down for Brad Raffensperger. He was one of the heroes. He was, of course, the Secretary of State of Georgia, and he was the guy that Trump famously called and said, hey, buddy, can you find me 11,000 some odd votes? And this week, a judge in Fulton County granted a motion to allow absentee ballots to be unsealed and examined for fraud. He's turned it down 3 times. This time he gave in. He's running for office. He said, okay, not fighting it. And, he was a profile in courage. He's a profile in a lack of courage now, which is really stunning because he gained such national acclaim. And to cave at this point, Brad Raffensperger, history had you on the right side, not so much anymore. A brand up for my friend KARINE JEAN-PIERRE. She is the assistant press secretary working under Jen Psaki, and she held a press conference. She filled in for Jen and is the first Black woman in 30 years to stand behind that podium. First openly gay woman. And she's just a wonderful, delightful person. You might know her from MSNBC, and not a major step in history or race relations, but a nice little thing that's happening. Just wanted to give her a shout out. Big brand up for Naomi Osaka. Naomi Osaka, of course, the championship tennis player who basically withdrew from the French Open because she was getting fined because she came out and said, and this is just amazing. Sometimes the stupidity of organization. She said, look, I don't want to speak to the media, not because I don't speak to the media or it's beneath me. She has a social anxiety issue. She says she came out and was very, very open. She says, I'm not a natural public speaker, and I get huge waves of anxiety before I speak to the world's media. I get really nervous and find it stressful to always try and engage and give the media the best answers I can. And she started taking so much, was getting fined, and was the World Tennis Association, World Tennis Organization was coming down on her. And so she said, I'm withdrawing from the French Open. I don't want to draw attention to myself. Come on, guys. Here we have somebody brave enough. She's not being sullen and saying, I'm not talking to the press. She's saying, hey, I'd rather not talk to them because I have an issue here and I have a social anxiety issue. And, whenever anybody famous comes forward and talks about some of their, warts, so to speak, and particularly when it comes to anything with mental illness or anxiety or any type of social disorder, God bless. So for the tennis, obviously they don't want to set a precedent because they don't want their athletes to be able to say, we're not talking to the press, but you've got to also take a case-by-case basis and just have a little sekel, it's a Jewish word for a little sensitivity, a little empathy. So big brand down for world tennis, big brand up for Naomi Osaka, and we're rooting for you, kid. Okay, huge brand up for Britney Spears and the Shakespeare Theater. Yes, in the same sentence, Britney Spears and the Shakespeare Theater. Broadway producers and the Shakespeare Theater Company are bringing something called Once Upon a One More Time, a fractured fairy tale musical built around the songbook of Britney Spears. So this is the same group that brings you Hamlet, Twelfth Night. Now a Britney Spears fractured fairy tale. I just love that. I love when different parts of the universe of pop culture come together. It just, because it's just something kind of so nutty about it. it makes so much sense because it makes so little sense. So no in-depth analysis here, but first of all, I love Britney Spears. Let me say that. I have just great memories of taking my 16-year-old to see NSYNC, and opening up was a 16-year-old Britney Spears that nobody heard of before. And I remember that. And it's just something that always bothered my oldest daughter and myself when she was 16. So big brand up for both Shakespeare Theater and Britney Spears in the same sentence. But another big brand up while we're kind of in this universe, I don't even know what this has to do with it, is something called Gen Z fairy fashion. It's a new dreamy ethereal friend. Gen Z is coming out of the pandemic with people wearing sweatpants. They're wearing what's called fairy core, which features heavy references to nature and a penchant for embroidery, relaxed dresses, even fairy wings. And let me tell you why this is so big for me. Raising 3 daughters, I used to play something called Pretty Pretty Princess, which is a game where you land on different pieces and you dress up and you get to put on earrings and a crown and a tiara and little tutus. And I used to love doing that. My kids used to tell me I loved it too much. That's something for another podcast. But it was something that I think of my daughters all the time. I used to love dressing up as a little princess, wearing fairy clothes. So I love that it's coming back and Gen Zers are bringing it back as fashion. So fairy fashion, I guess that's the way they're calling it. Good for you. I love that I get to do this show. All right. Next, a big thumbs down a big brand down for Exxon, but a big brand up for the Exxon shareholders. ExxonMobil shareholders voted Wednesday to install at least 2 new independent directors on a company board who are interested in addressing climate change and lagging financial. But these are basically put 2 climate people on the board, and the CEO was fighting desperately against it, but the shareholders voted for it. What an amazing thought, having 2 climate conscious people on the board of an oil company, of an energy company. Kind of makes sense to me, but Exxon CEO Darren Woods was against it. But the shareholders, and this is why shareholders again own companies and not the CEO, voted to put 2 kind of climate activists on their board. So big brand down for Exxon, brands up for the Exxon shareholders. Okay, brand down, or I guess brand down for Subways. I don't mean Subway the sandwich. I mean Subways that we ride all over this country. That there was a research done by over 900 scientists and volunteers in 60 cities on 6 continents, from Stockholm to Shanghai, that showed scientists discovered more than 10,000 previously unidentified species of virus and bacteria, and that there is something called a core urban microbiome that all cities shared that compromises 31 different species of bacteria. So you get to interact with very special bacteria if you ride the subway. So you should feel very special about that, and that there are 10,000. So next time you go to grab one of those things, and this feels slimy, it feels wet, it's one of 10,000 bacteria that are only on Subway, so you can feel special about that. So big brand down for, I gotta tell you, I don't know. Okay. Big brand up for toiletries. Toiletries are way up post-pandemic. Teeth whiteners, perfume, deodorant are all flying off the shelves. And why is this? For obvious reasons. People, when they were indoors, I guess they weren't keeping to their hygiene as much. I'm a big hygiene guy. I believe indoors are out. You should be grooming yourself properly. But evidently when it came to nail polish and things like that, and all kinds of other things that make people feel more handsome or more pretty, they're popping off the shelves. So toiletries, big brand up coming out of the pandemic. Way to go, toiletries. And finally, my last brand down is for the Spain postal system, a valiant attempt at trying to do something to push, racial equality forward, that they came out with stamps of various skin tone colors. And unfortunately, the lighter skin tone stamps are more valuable. They're worth $1.60, 1.6 euros versus 70 cents. And the logic behind this, which obviously does not send out a very good signal, but the logic behind the Spanish postal system was that, well, this is then going to cause you to use more stamps of the less expensive, so there'll be more stamps of of darker skin colors out there. Nice try, bad miss. You just, for all the obvious reasons. So the famous Spanish postal system, a brand down, and those are our brands of the week. Before we get to our big brand interview, I want you to subscribe, rate, and review on anywhere you get Apple Podcasts. This great podcast, pass it along to your friends. You can also watch it on video on YouTube. But let's get to our big brand interview, our big brand of the week, and that's Hunter Biden. There's been nobody that's been in the news more than Hunter Biden over the last couple of years. Obviously, the embattled president's son. He was a focus of the Trump group in their campaign. Bad move, because at the end of the day, Americans care about their health care and their food. They don't care about a president's son's problems with addiction. And he's got a new book, Beautiful Things, which is a very, very deep, introspective book. Talks all about his addiction, all about his problems, very heartfelt. And I think you're going to really, really enjoy a very deeply personal interview with Hunter Biden. Here it is. I am thrilled that today's guest, probably heard his name in the last year or two more, if not much, than anybody else's, other than his father's. I'm talking about Hunter Biden. His new book is Beautiful Things. It's a stunning, stunning book. The New York Times called it, I want to get this right because the book is equal parts family saga, grief narrative, and addict's howl. Incredible story. I'm thrilled to welcome Hunter Biden. How are you, man?
I'm doing well, Donny. Thank you for having me. Congratulations on the show.
Thank you.
It's great.
First off, how you feeling? I mean, this is the first time you and I are meeting, and I've been, following you like everybody else. And obviously, you've been through more in your 50 years than most people are in 25 lifetimes. But how you feeling today?
I'm doing great. I'm actually in a better place in my life than I think that I've ever been, just in terms of my personal headspace. And it's been a long journey, but I'm healthy, happy, sober, and I wake up every day and just go through that list and what I'm grateful for. It's 2 days from now is the anniversary of my brother's death, and it's been 6 years, and that 6 years has been a long journey, but. Today, I'm doing great. And I thank God for it.
You say you go through a list of things. What's the list of things you go through to remind yourself?
First is family. And I have three incredible daughters. My daughter Finnegan just graduated from Penn.
I went to Penn. There you go.
Yeah. So they all three went to Penn.
No, wow. So much smarter than their father, obviously, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's for sure. I can tell you that. They followed their Uncle Bo. My brother went to Penn.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah. And anyway, but they all three went to Penn. And then Naomi went on to Columbia Law School. She graduated from there. And Maisie is a rising junior next year at Penn. So they're doing great. Everybody's great. I have a 14-month-old little boy named Bo, after my brother. And he's a bundle of joy. However, the 5.5-hour plane ride home in the aisle and window seat with me and Melissa with a 14-month-old from DC last night.
Good luck.
It took it out of me, man.
We're going to obviously talk a lot about your addiction, and it was obviously the book was a cathartic book for you. One thing I wonder as a dad also, and I have three daughters also, and I love my daughter's piece, and we're going to obviously talk about a lot with the relationship with your dad, and I have a very similar relationship with my dad. The one thing about addiction, I'm questioning every time I kind of go off the rails. I haven't had problems with addiction, but I'm going down a bad path. Somehow for me, gonna fuck up for my daughters. Pushes me back. How? Because I sense the love you have for your daughters, obviously, and it's real and it's genuine. Yeah. How was that? And I'm gonna be a dumb guy about addiction. Wasn't that a stopgap when you're going down the drain? And isn't there some piece? Yeah. Isn't the dad piece of you kick in at any point, or just that it just goes numb in a different place?
Yeah. So this is the Donny, the single most, I think, often asked question by people that are not addicts to people that suffer from addiction, which is, what the hell were you thinking? Like, why? How could you? And by the way, not only from people just who don't suffer from addiction, but people that love people that are addicts, like my dad, like my brother, like my daughters. It's like just the inability to understand how their love couldn't overcome or supersede the addiction. How could literally a drink could come before, showing up for the people that you love most in your life. And it's an incredibly frustrating thing for the addict, because it's almost impossible to be able to answer in any way that seems rational, or that doesn't sound like an excuse, or doesn't sound like a rationalization of your behavior. But I do know this, is that Addiction is a disease. It's not an excuse. It's not an excuse for bad behavior. It doesn't absolve you of the sins of the things that you may have done under the influence, ever. But if you can at least, as an addict, start to realize that you're not making a conscious choice, then you can maybe begin to kind of repair those relationships and make amends for not being there. In my case, that was my greatest sin with my daughters for that 4-year period of time from when my brother died. As I said, I was a really pretty successful guy. From at least my standards, from my life, I married at a young age, and I made it on my own. I paid for my own college. I paid for my own law school. I paid for my brother's law school.
You went to a shitty law school, Yale, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I graduated from Yale, and I transferred in, as my daughters like to point out.
I transferred into Wharton also. I did the backdoor thing also. That's right. It's
so funny. My daughter Finnegan was graduated from Penn this weekend or last week, and we had a little party back in DC for her. And one of her friends said, "So where did you go to law school, Mr. Biden?" And I said, "I went to Yale." And Maisie, my youngest, chimed in. He graduated from Yale. I said, "Thanks, honey." It's one of my greatest.
Amazing how there's something about daughters. They just know how to set us straight. It's just incredible. It's just
all the time. It's incredible, and it actually fills me with pride because that was my brother right there, keeping me in line through my girls, who they adored their Uncle Bo. Yeah. But my point is that. One of the things that bothers me, I think, the most is this perception that's been put out there is that I never worked a day in my life. Well, when I was 11 years old, I started a lawn mowing business with my brother and a guy named Eddie White down the street, and I haven't stopped working a day since. I worked at unloading rail cars of frozen. Boxes of beef in the docks in Wilmington, Delaware. I did about every job you can possibly think of. And at one point, my drinking got to a point in my early 30s where I thought that I gotta do something about this. And I got clean and sober and built a business, built a law firm, and represented Jesuit universities, and was really proud of that. And after my brother's death, I lost it. I fell into a space that started with alcohol, which is my ultimate drug of choice, which I think has been the most dangerous drug for me. I think for society too, but I can speak for myself. And then one day it got just very black with and dark, and I went down another rabbit hole that would just grip me in a way that I'd never been gripped before with crack cocaine. And I talk about this in the book. Your exact question. I was staying in a $39 a night motel room, probably more like $69 a night motel room outside of New Haven in 95, off of 95. And I get a call. My parents never stopped calling me, and my girls never stopped calling me. And this time I answered. And I was on a long run at this point. And my mom said, "We want to see you. Please come down and just have dinner with us." And I said, "Sure, Mom, I'll be there." And I drove down. I walk in the door, and there's my dad, my mom, and my 3 daughters, and Natalie and Hunter. My niece and nephew are like my children to me. Hunter is named after me, my Bo's son. And they're sitting there with 2 counselors, and from a rehab that I'd gone to.
So as soon as you walk in, you know what's going on here.
Oh, I know what's going on. Yeah. And I literally just stopped. I stopped in my tracks. I said, "What the F you did? I can't believe that you're doing this to me. What the hell is this? This is it was out of a movie, Tony." And I mean, it's almost shamefully out of a movie, my reaction to it. And then I storm out the door and I start literally, my oldest Naomi had taken my keys out of my pocket. And so I literally start walking up the driveway. My dad comes literally running after me. And I'm not running away from him, but I'm walking briskly away. And he just grabs me and holds me. And he said, I don't know what to do. Please just tell me what to do, crying. So I'm so scared. And, that guilt, because in that moment I said, Dad, okay, I'll go somewhere. And I knew exactly what I was doing at that moment. I was choosing to say to him, okay, I'll take care of something that I very damn well knew I wasn't going to take care of, just to get away, to be able to have another hit. And I go through my mind, Donnie, all the time, still to this day. I don't know of any greater love story than the one between my brother, my dad, and I. That involves our whole family, and wrapped in that love story. My aunts, my uncles, my Uncle Jimmy is my best friend in the world. My Aunt Valerie, half raised us, and my kids and my brother. And I don't know any greater love story than that. And in that moment, I chose to go find another hit of crack. And it's impossible to move forward if you aren't able to, recognize the power that addiction has over at least me, this addict, and a lot of other addicts that I know.
How many interventions did your family have with you over the years? Because you went into a real tailspin with Bo, but this is obviously throughout your life, starting in your 30s, you were struggling with the demons. So how many times were there actual interventions?
It's good for me to go through it. So when I was 33, it wasn't an intervention. I knew that I had a problem, and the problem was that I just was drinking way too much. I'd started a business. I was doing really well, at least from my perspective. And I started to drink every day after work. And then I started to drink, it started, you go at 5 o'clock and have a drink. And then it turned into 4 o'clock. And then it turned from 4 a.m. to 4 a.m. And that lasted for probably 6 months before my brother just said, what the hell is going on with you? And because we literally talked every day of my life. And I said, I don't want to be this person. And so I went and I got help. And I stayed sober for close to 7 years with the grace of God and the program. A lot of people I got sober the way a lot of people do. And I stayed sober, and I stayed close to people that were, also in recovery. And it's amazing, Donnie. And I then was on a plane coming back from a business trip, and the flight attendant rolls a cart by, and it was a long international flight, and it's one of those big carts, and had every kind of vodka you could find on it. And I said, "I'll have a Bloody Mary." And just in that moment, 7 years of sobriety, vanished. And then it was.
So nothing does it, at that moment, because I know some addicts and I know recovering guys, and they talk about every day it's a fight, and every day. And so what triggers that moment? Because it doesn't sound like you were under a particularly stressful situation at that second. So why all of a sudden after 7 years you go, okay, I'll Bloody Mary, make it a double, whatever it is.
Because it's interesting. When you're go to the rooms with any of these support groups, but I am, I got sober going into the rooms of AA, and every single what they call old timer will tell you this, is that one day, if you get away from the program, if you get away from the all of the things that you need to practice on a daily basis to keep you clean and sober, and you don't do them, and you start to drift away them, one day you're going to be without a defense, and somebody's going to offer you a drink or a drug, and you're going to take it, and then you're going to find out just what hell is. And that's what happened to me. Because from that moment on, up until 2 years ago now, I'm 2 years clean and sober. Up until that very moment, it was a cycle of relapse and differing degrees of hell, ending with probably the worst hell that I can imagine for anybody at the very end.
What is a way for us to go back a little bit, obviously, and everybody knows the story and the tragedy in your family and losing your mom and your little infant sister. If somebody asks you a question, why do you think you were an addict? Well, I mean, it's such an ignorant thing to ask. What if you've obviously done a lot of work on yourself? And if you, what would be the answer you come up with that way? I mean, genetics or this or that, or just or the tragedy or the all the above.
Yeah. So this is the discussion that I prayed the book would start is exactly that. Is to be able to openly and honestly talk about it from the perspective of someone that that is perceived to be in a position that how could they ever be addicted to crack cocaine? The president of the United States' son is going out talking about well, I want to talk about it because it's the truth. And the fact of the matter is that I know I'm not alone in the struggle, not as it relates to crack or any other drug that you're addicted to. And there's a great doctor named Gabor Mate. And I don't know if you've ever seen any of the or read anything that Dr. Mate has written, but he has come to the conclusion through his study over many decades. And he spoke to me more than anybody else from a professional point of view that I've ever heard. He said, all addiction is rooted in trauma. And I now anecdotally can say that I don't know of an addict that hasn't experienced extreme trauma in varying degrees in their life. And again, I always fought against that. I fought against the idea that somehow I was broken from the beginning. Because it's, it's just not the way that I wanted to ever perceive myself. I know that there is, people talk about a genetic component. I know that people will talk about it as a, neurological and a physiological predisposition to become susceptible to addiction. But the fact of the matter is that what it opened up for me when Dr. Mate talked about all addiction being rooted in trauma was a real understanding of who I am and what I'm trying to cover up when I choose a drink or a drug over the love that is in front of me, over the beautiful things that are in front of me. And, addicts will talk about trying to fill the God-sized hole that they feel in the middle of their chest with a drink or a drug. And what is that hole? Why does it exist? Is it, for me, I know that I went through a lot when I was young. If you just take the accident that my brother and I were in that took my mom and my sister. But you know what, Donnie? A lot of people go through that and they come out fine. I'm not unique in any way. My story isn't so tragic or, extraordinary.
It's fairly extraordinary. Losing at age 2, losing a mom and a baby sister.
Yeah,
so,
but
there are people who go through it, and there aren't addicts, absolutely.
Yeah,
but
people go through it, and I know people go through it, and they don't become addicts necessarily. But I know this, whatever it is, is that it has helped me to kind of start to understand of what it is that I'm trying to fill, to be able to talk about it honestly, to talk about addiction, not from the criminal justice perspective, or it's just a pure abstinence, which I have to commit to pure abstinence. That's the kind of addict I know that I am. What am I trying to cover up? What am I trying to overcome or fill that is missing in my life through what? For me, the first time I took a drink, I don't know about you, is I felt, I was 4'11", I weighed 90 pounds. I was a freshman in high school. Oh, yeah. And I had my first real drink. I took a drink when I was a little kid, when I was 8, underneath the table I talk about in the book.
Yeah, champagne, when your dad was reelected.
4'11", and I remember going up to the prettiest girl in high school, a senior, and asking her to the prom. Now, she laughed her ass off at me, but in that moment, I thought I was I was 6'1", and had a beard, and but that's what it did for me in the moment, and that ultimately is the answer I give people. Why did you take drugs? because it worked until it didn't.
Hey, we're going to take a quick break here and hear from some of our sponsors, the ones that are paying for this show. And here we've got some messages. If you're a business owner, you might be making running your business harder on yourself than necessary. Business is tough enough as it is. Don't let QuickBooks and spreadsheets slow you down anymore. It's time to upgrade to NetSuite. I ran a business. NetSuite is the way to go. It's not QuickBooks anymore. It's NetSuite. Stop paying for multiple systems that don't give you the information you need when you need it, and ditch the spreadsheets and all the old software you've outgrown. This is the simple, smartest way to do it. Now's the time to upgrade to NetSuite by Oracle. It's the world's #1 cloud business system. #1 for a reason, guys. Gives you visibility and control over your financials, HR, inventory, e-commerce, everything you need all in one, instantaneously. Whether you're doing $1 million or hundreds of millions in revenue, save time and money. Join over 24,000 companies using NetSuite right now. I'm going to say it again. I ran a business. NetSuite's the way to go. Let NetSuite show you how they'll benefit your business with a free product tour at netsuite.com/Donny. That's netsuite.com/Donny. Schedule your free product tour right now at netsuite.com/Donny. netsuite.com/Donny. Check it out. Take my word for it. Hey, everybody. There's certain things about the summer that just kind of make you feel a certain way, whether it's, for me, it's seeing the fireflies at night and seeing my kids run around on the grass or the sand. And obviously it's cookouts. And I got to tell you about something that I found that it makes it even kind of like more special. And I use this, and I was using it out at the beach, and it's called Solo Stove. And it's got a smokeless design. Gets rid of all the fumes. It makes it so much better. It's much easier to start the fire. It's easy to clean up. There's no charred hunks of wood, just pure white ash. It's easy to keep lit, even easier to clean. Doesn't matter what you're making, Solo Stove is the way to go. It's fire pits and stoves engineered for adventure. It creates like special moments because you're not worried about all the other stuff. It's easy to clean. You don't have the fumes. No one needs a reason to gather around the fire. You just took away any reason not to. If this is the place to do it, Solo Stove. I use it. I don't always, sometimes I just do ads on the show. This thing I actually use. Now you can get $10 off when you use promo code Donny at checkout. Just go to solostove.com and remember you get $10 off when you use promo code Donny. I'm telling you, Solo Stove, very cool, clean, food tastes great. I love it. Fireflies, hot dogs, Solo Stove, all the above. Enjoy.
That's one of the things about the tragedy of my mother and my sister dying. The truth of the matter is that it was so, that space that we lost, the giant hole in our lives, was filled with so much love. My dad is an extraordinary man, and I am incredibly biased. But I don't care what you think of his policies or I'm not talking to you, Donny, but people, or what you think. But I will tell you this, he is, if I can be half the father that he has been, I know that I'll be the best father I know.
I feel the same way about my dad. Let me ask you a question along those lines. You have this dad who obviously president of the United States and this rock and this, I don't have to give you the litany of his attributes. And you have this older brother that you looked up to who, I don't want to say he was a saint, but it sounds like the guy could do no wrong. And, name it, and so
yeah.
That's tough though. I think it's tough having any kind of super overwhelmingly successful, powerful father. And now you got an older brother. And yes, you've had success in your own right, but that's got to kick you. The love is so clearly there for both of them, but that's hard.
Yeah.
I'm a guy. I'm just being honest. If I had that kind of father and that kind of brother, it would throw me a little bit.
Yeah, that's the thing. You looked up to your dad the way that I looked up to my dad, right?
But my dad didn't end up being president of the United States.
I know, but regardless, is it he was everything to you?
Yes, he was. Yes, he was. I miss him 100 times a day.
Yeah, and I never looked at my dad as a United States senator. I looked at him as my dad.
Yeah.
That's how I looked up to him. I didn't look up to him as and I understand the question, and it makes a lot of sense because I think it's a rarity to have the experience that I have with somebody that has been so driven in their life. I think I'm a student of history, And I don't know of many presidents that have been able to balance their ambition with their family and their outward value set. I don't know many that have been able to do that. Even the ones that we find so heroic. I mean, you go back and you look at the relationships with their sons, and not many of them are
it's unusual, and it's
very unusual.
It's what's incredible. You tell the story about how you speak to him every night, and he speaks to everyone's grandchildren. I mean, and I remember the quote that he said then when he first lost his wife and your mom, and he was like, "Well, I'm going to try and be senator, but if I can't be a great dad, I'll just give up being senator. They can find another senator. They can't find another dad," and that sums it up.
So that's that's the answer to your question. Is that it was never a pressure to have the quote unquote outward success that my dad had. I never felt that pressure. The only thing that I aspired to was to be as good a man as my dad.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm not as good as man as my dad. I mean, I can openly say that. I openly say it, and it was interesting that my daughter just got by a mitzvah last weekend, and she gave a little speech, and she thanked me and her mom and said how much she loves me and I protect her. I'm strong. And then she gets to my dad and she goes, "But you're my hero. You're my guardian." And I wasn't jealous. It was like, I got it. He's just that special,
No, but so Donny, you get it. Yeah. It's that. It literally is the same way my kids. And both kids, Natalie and Hunt, and Maisie Finnegan and Naomi, are with my dad. Is that I know that they love me most, but I know that they love him more.
I want to talk about,
and it's not because he's, and I'll tell you what,
he's just that special. He's that special, but it takes him you have to. Not all men can do that and can say, my dad was better than me in a lot of ways, and I feel the same way. I take one. By the way, I take just as much pride in it as it relates to my brother. Is that we were never in competition ever. Because a dad like that never puts two boys that are as close as Bo and I were in competition. We were always responsible for each other. Mm-hmm. And so as much as I talk about in the book that my brother was there to save me from falling, I take great pride in the fact that I was there for my brother whenever he needed me, no matter what. Did you talk in the book, all the interventions with your dad, and he's crying, and of course you honey. Was there ever tough love? Was there ever when I don't mean literally smacked you around, but what the fuck are you doing? And I mean,
yeah. I mean, absolutely, 100%. I mean, number one, there's only so much tough love that you can give a 44-year-old man that has raised 3 children, that is completely solvent and paying his own way in life. I mean, there's only so much as a parent that you can do once you're out of your child's out of the home. But the thing with my dad was this: is that I always knew that his love was unconditional, but I always knew when I was disappointing him. Mm-hmm. And the only thing that ever disappoints my dad was when I was not treating myself the way that he knew I should treat myself. Yeah, that's it. And it's not about the moral failings that come along with.
He just wanted you to be okay and wanted you to treat yourself.
He just wanted me to be okay. And I'll tell you what, there's nothing more powerful than that with my dad.
I want to shift to the night of the debates. I remember I was watching, and I thought about you at the moment when Trump was coming after you, as he so often did, and he was doing his Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden's an asshole and this and a drug addict and this and your dad, just in the most genuine, real way, was like, "Look, my son, like a lot of people, has overcome a lot of stuff, and I'm proud of him." And I got chills. What you were obviously watching, what did that feel like at that moment? Because obviously you were carrying, I don't want to say guilt, but you're like, oh my God, I'm a problem for my dad. In this, I become the Trumps are going after me, whatnot. And like, there was a lift at that moment that I felt as an observer. And I just take me through you watching it, what that felt like at that moment.
It's interesting, Donny. It's the way that I watch debates. I don't know. I think maybe with the way that you watch it, is that there's an emotional component of it that you're waiting for. There's the other component of it where you're just watching on pins and needles. If my dad is that that it doesn't get tripped up in saying something that's going to carry the news the next day. But the one thing that I was hoping for was that attack from Donald Trump, because I knew my dad would answer from his heart. And I knew that my dad would answer in a way that would speak to the millions and millions of people that have somebody that they love or themselves that has suffered from the disease of addiction. And I knew in that instant that they had handed me a gift and to show everyone exactly who my dad was as a parent. It's not, my dad didn't, say that my addiction was an excuse for anything, blah, blah, blah. It was just, my son had a problem. He's struggled with it, and he's doing great now. But I love him.
Hey, we're going to take a quick break here and hear from some of our sponsors, the ones that are paying for this show. And here we've got some messages. Hey, I want to talk to you guys about Indeed. And, if you're the hiring person for your company, if you're an HR person in charge of the hiring, you need help making the short list of quality candidates. You need a hiring partner who makes your life easier. You need Indeed. I've run a business. Indeed is fantastic. The job site that makes hiring as easy as 1, 2, 3, post-screening interview. It's all on Indeed. You get a quality list of candidates whose resumes on Indeed, they match your job description. It makes things easier. It's faster. And the best part is you only pay for the candidates that meet the must-have qualifications. So you're not paying for anything extra. And it's scheduled and complete interviews on your Indeed dashboard. Makes connecting and hiring the right talent fast and easy. They have something called Indeed Instant Match. It gives you quality candidates whose resume on Indeed fits your job description immediately. And Indeed skills test that on average reduces hiring time by 27%. You're saving literally a quarter of your time in hiring with this thing. That alone pays for it. You can choose from more than 130 skills tests, then add your must-have requirements. You only pay for the applications that meet them. According to Talent Nest, Indeed delivers 4 times more hires than all of the job sites combined. If you're hiring, you need Indeed. Get started right now with a free $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade. That's a free $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade. Indeed is the way to go. Your job post on Indeed.com/onbrand. Get a $75 credit at Indeed.com/onbrand. Indeed.com/onbrand. Offer valid through June 30th. Terms and conditions apply. That's $75 off. You want Indeed. If you're hiring people, this is the way to go. Indeed. Please trust me on it and get the $75 off. I'll read it one more time. That's Indeed.com/onbrand.
And I think that just so many people, I don't know of anybody, Donny, that I've ever talked to that hasn't had somebody in their family that they love, that thinks is an amazing person, that has, struggled to take it.
And it was so genuine. Did you, as a Jewish guy, we play in the guilt space a lot, without stereotyping, but it kind of comes as our birthright. And during the whole campaign and during, as you were becoming fodder, for the right wing and for everything, and that you were going to be his Achilles heel, did you feel guilty? Were you apologetic? Were you every day you're going and my dad is going for the gold and Hunter.
Yeah, I write about it in the book. Is it the longest running argument my dad and I have ever had is who's supposed to be apologizing to who for? He would say, "God, honey, I am so sorry they're putting you through this. I am, and I'd say, Dad, don't. What are you? I can't. I'm so sorry that I ever, gave them the rope to, hang me with. I mean, this isn't you. But at the end of the day, Donny, I knew one thing is that I never was going to lose my dad. What they thought is that I think that their incredible miscalculation was based upon a really smart observation at first. Is this? This is nothing more important to my dad than his family. Mm-hmm. And he just lost his oldest son, and that his sole remaining boy was teetering on a cliff. And maybe if they could just push him off, then they're not going to have to deal with Joe Biden as a presidential candidate. And I really truly believe that was their intent. And instead of driving us apart, instead of creating a division in my family and a chaos that they knew was the only thing that probably could distract my dad, is a problem in his family that created that atmosphere. It did the exact opposite. It just literally brought us. I mean, it's not possible to bring us closer, but it made us. It gave us more resolve. I'll tell you that.
I personally have always found the Trump kids even more offensive than their father, particularly Donald Trump Jr. Did you want to scream from the rafters, as obviously they were getting up and talking about Burisma and you know, family nepotism and whatnot, where these two kids, or these three kids, there's nothing that's happened to them in their life that's not because of their last name. Did you want to just get on network television and go, are you fucking kidding me?
You know, okay. No, you know why? Is because I watched Morning Joe every morning during that period of time, and I heard you doing it. I mean it. But look, I mean, geez. What do I even say to that? I mean, I think John Hyland has the greatest line about these people of all time. It's either projection or confession.
Yeah.
All of it.
Yeah. So on Burisma, the one question I am going to ask you is, and you know, you've been cleared of any wrongdoing, but as a marketing guy, I could say to you, look, the optics weren't right there. You know, bad judgment, certainly didn't break a law or whatnot. You've been asked this question a bunch of times, but I got to ask it. So what's the response?
Yeah. Well, I think it's the same answer. Is that the number one is that at the time that I took the position, I took it from a position of being incredibly qualified for the job. They asked me to come on to do corporate coverage, but you know, I could go through the whole list, Donnie. I was a lawyer at Boyce Schiller Flexner. I had the focus of corporate governance. I brought Burisma into them as a client first. The president of Poland was on the board, the former president of Poland, who's a incredibly well-respected guy. He talked to me about how standing up for private organizations like this who were being threatened by Russian aggression, literal Russian aggression in Ukraine, was the true kind of need that was a bulwark for democracy. All of that stuff. And the one thing that is absolutely that I do get a little frustrated about is that it's a false narrative from the start, Donnie. Whether you think or not, I should have joined the board of a foreign company. Well, maybe we can have that discussion. Mm-hmm. I did, and I did it honorably. And like you said, you know, in retrospect, it was it probably wasn't a very smart decision. Not probably. I won't qualify it at all. But right now, what we're finding, I think, I mean, if you open the paper today, and I mean like a real paper, I think that we're gonna figure out, just to the degree that that this was a Russian disinformation campaign from the outset.
What I always thought was so stupid about the whole strategy in there is that what voters give a shit about is their Social Security and their health care and their education, and it was the Trump arrogance of not understanding what really motivates and moves people. What I got to ask you this question I ask everybody: what's the Hunter Biden brand?
Resilience through love. That's it. You know, it's what literally is. I think I hope is the whole Biden family brand. Is I hope at the end of the day, and I got hopefully a lot more days to come, and I have a lot of amends to make, starting with the people that I love most, but a lot of people that I owe apologies to for not being there for them. But I got up, and I take incredible pride in being able to say that at my darkest moment, I was able to kind of see the beautiful things that my brother told me to keep focused on, and reach for that love. And I do it every day. And even with all these attacks, it's resilience through love.
As a branding guy, you have actually an amazing opportunity beyond the opportunity of somebody who's found sobriety and all that brings you. And you've talked about that. Is that, you know, the sexiest story in the world is the media is taking somebody down. And then resurrection is a great story. And you know, whatever your second act is, if I was, you know, just helping you brand or coaching you, or I would say, like, you got a great fucking opportunity to like to really make a difference, you know, because you have gotten beaten up. And so the guy that gets beaten up in a strange way has I don't want to say more of an opportunity, but you've got a lot of bandwidth in front of you. And having said that, what would be the dream scenario for the next 20 years for you? Beyond the obvious stuff of your children being healthy and raising your baby Bo and staying in your great marriage and all the kind of the human stuff, just from a career, from an accomplishment point of view, if you could write the script, what would it be?
Yeah, exactly that, Donnie. Exactly what you just said. I think that I literally have a once in a generation opportunity to be able to talk to people about exactly that, resilience through love, about addiction, about dealing with grief and loss, to be able to actually have open conversations about it. And you know what I'm really encouraged by? You know, when I wrote the book, I knew that number one, what was most important to me is that as a writer, that it was a book that people would want to read. But number two was that exact message would come through, is that I want people to start the conversation, and not just around the kitchen tables, but then, you know, around the cafeteria tables with each other about their own experiences with addiction, grief, loss, depression. I think that we're at a moment in time in which my message in my life, that I think that I have an opportunity to talk to a lot of people about how much courage it takes to love somebody through their addiction. I think I have a lot of opportunity to talk about so many of the people that have been completely left behind and forgotten about in our criminal justice system, that are dealing with something that's a physical and mental health issue and not a criminal issue. And you know, one of the things that's really cool that happened is, if you noticed, is that, you know, Patty Davis wrote this beautiful editorial opinion piece after my book came out in the USA Today, talking about her struggle with addiction when her dad was governor and then president, and then Mrs. McCain came out and talked about her struggle with addiction when her husband was a United States senator, and the struggle she had with opioids and pain medication that she fell into. And, you know, Harry had just come out and started to talk about his own problems with alcohol and drugs, you know, and when I think that somebody from the royal family, Prince Harry, is starting to willing to talk about how they struggle, you realize that, man, I ain't unique.
No,
this ain't just me.
You are far from it.
Everybody's going through it.
Hey,
and,
I want to just shift gears for a second about your dad.
Yeah.
What story hasn't been told about your dad? And we know what kind of person he is and what a politician, but something, a TV show you watched with him, or something that we can send out. It's going to go all over social media in a fun way. That what don't we know that you, as a guy, his son, and loves him more than anything, and vice versa? You know, flatulence, anything you got, you know.
You know, it's funny. We were all together for the weekend. All the girls and my dad and mom and my sister and Melissa and baby Bo, and we went to Camp David, which is like the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, what's going on there? What's going on at Camp David?
It's just woods and cabins, and, you know, just neat stuff. And I mean, it's like, what a privilege. I mean, I feel like you walk onto there and you just think of the history, and they have lists of the people that have stayed in each cabin from the beginning of since Eisenhower, and it's the coolest thing. And the Navy runs it, and they're just the most incredibly. It's really, really just so cool. The whole thing is so cool. Being, having your dad as president, even at the age of 51, with all the things I've gone through, I never, not for a moment, don't just go when I walk in there.
Holy shit. Yeah.
And go like, oh my God, like Dad. Talking this weekend, we were talking about movies, and we just, we watched at Something About Mary.
Great.
But Dad didn't come to the movie. And I said, Dad doesn't, like, my mom always makes fun of my dad and says, you know what? You're the only grown man I've ever known to cry at Benji. She's been saying that for 3 years. Is making fun of my dad. I remember Mom, Dad took me and Bo to go see Benji, and Dad, and crying in his popcorn at Benji. But that's my dad.
What's the?
No, I do the same thing.
I cry at Pride of the Yankees and Brian's song, and it's the end of Field of Dreams when he has a catch with his dad.
Yeah.
Really, really, really enjoy this, and I'm glad you're doing well. Keep up the great work, man. You got a big road ahead of you. Do some great stuff. All right. The book.
Thanks, Donnie.
The book is Beautiful Things. It is riveting. It is whether you're following Bo as he's scraping carpets, looking for Parmesan cheese to snort in his nose, or going through a 13-day bender, which we'll talk another time. I want to understand how you go 13 days just drinking and doing crack, but we'll save that for another day. But stay well, my friend. I really appreciate it.
I really, really am honored, Donnie. Thank you so much.
Thanks, man.
Good luck with the show. Thanks.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed the show today. The Hunter Biden interview was one of my favorites, and very compelling guy. We'll see you next week on Brand. Remember to rate, subscribe, and review to anywhere you get podcasts, Spotify, Apple, anywhere else. And you can follow on YouTube also. So don't remember, stay on brand, and we'll see you next week on Brand. I'm Donny Deutsch.